Hey everyone, how's it going? Bowser the Healer here with another PUG healing guide. Today we're going to talk about managing cooldowns. This one's going to be a bit quicker, and I know this one can be a bit intimidating for new players, but trust me, as the key levels go up, this information becomes more important, so you don't have to worry about mastering it when you're first starting, but it's certainly worth thinking about. Before we get into the whole management theory, let's just categorize our cooldowns into 4 categories. I like to have anything in the 3 to 5 minute category, emergency, anything in the 1 to 2 minute cooldown as a mid cooldown, and then I have shorter cooldowns, which is anything from 10 to 45 second and instant. That stuff that's up 10 seconds or less all the time. I use this categorization system, to better understand where these moves belong. The instant cooldowns are stuff you're going to be using all the time, so I don't really need to talk about that, but I do need to talk about short cooldowns, 10 to 45 seconds. So here in the Ruby life pools, there are these blaze-bound destroyers. They have a move called Inferno that does quite a bit of damage up front and then a pretty nasty dot afterwards. So how do you deal with that damage? Well, you have cooldowns, you might as well use them. I noticed that a lot of newer healers press their buttons very reactively, but this is often a situation where you can improve on. When Inferno's going off, if you have any 10 to 45 second long cooldowns that you can essentially use them on almost every single instance of Inferno, helping your party stay alive, which lets them do more damage, and as long as you're not panic healing afterwards, will also let you do more damage or more CC, or set up other big heals for potentially things like the bomb that ends up getting thrown out. What about those longer cooldowns in that like minute to 2 minute category? Those are moves that you should also consider using frequently, because if you use one at this Blazebound Destroyer, you'll definitely have your 1 minute up by the next Blazebound Destroyer, and there's a chance if you use a 2 minute cooldown early on this one, you'll have it late on this one, depending on how hard the Fortified or Tyrannical week is. But that's important to remember, right? You could open with a 2 minute on this and have it up for the end of this, or at least have it up for when you go to Flame Gullet. And that's the most, I think, essential part of cooldown management is, will I have this up for a mechanic? Whether it be a boss mechanic or something like Flame Gullet, where after 50% HP, there's this ramping AoE that just does a ton of damage to the whole party. Now, what about those longer cooldowns, those emergency cooldowns? For me, an emergency cooldown is just that. I either plan it for some big amount of damage, or it is being used in an emergency. And so when considering when you can use a button, you have to consider a few factors. Let's say I use a 3 minute on this Blazebound Destroyer. Let's say the Inferno got out of hand, there were too many Cinder Bolts that didn't get kicked, and we ended up taking more damage. I just said, screw it, I'm gonna Emerald Communion everyone through this, and we're gonna be fine. Then what's the next big mechanic I might have wanted Emerald Communion on? Well, I would argue on a Fortified key, probably Flame Gullet. So then you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, okay, will I have that 3 minute cooldown by the time I get to Flame Gullet? Well, let's say I use that 3 minute here, and then we spend about a minute and a half on this pack, and then we have to walk all the way over here, and then we're fighting Flame Gullet, who doesn't start doing the damage until halfway. Oh, okay, so will I have an Emerald Communion up by the time I'm hitting 50% on Flame Gullet? And I'd argue on a higher key, yeah, absolutely. And so that's what allows me to gauge where my cooldowns go. So if I had to use that emergency button, well then at least it went to some good work. Now let's say it's Tyrannical and I have to use an emergency here, and then my team did something stupid here and I had to use an emergency here, and then I was fine here, and then we end up clearing this pack and going to the boss. And let's just say, for the sake of, we put them together. Well then, I might be down a lot of cooldowns going into a Blaze Hoof, and on Tyrannical, that might be lethal. However, I need to make it through each phase. If I have my 1 minute and a half and 2 minute cooldowns up, I might use those to help me get through the first phases of Blaze Hoof, and then the third phase, maybe one of my emergency cooldowns is back up and I can use it, and then trying to use maybe the 1 minute again combined with something else to get through another phase, and then bada bing bada boom, you might have your one more emergency heal ready by that 5th, 6th, or 7th round of damage if the fight ends up going that long. Now, is this frequently what happens? No, hopefully on a Tyrannical week, you don't need to blow all of your emergency cooldowns on a pull like this one, but that's sort of in essence what we're trying to do. Hey, will I have this up in time if I use it here? And if you're not going to have something up in time, it's about figuring out what you will have up in time so that you can plan to heal and get through a boss fight or a mechanic long enough that you will eventually get those cooldowns back. Now, that's essentially all there is to it. Read through your moves, figure out what combos and combinations you have, but get comfortable with your full kit, right? If you don't know what all of the buttons do and all of the various combinations of cooldowns can do together, then you might want to do a little more research as you get into high keys so that you can really figure out where these moves go. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and next time, finally, I get to talk about damage. I'll see you all there.